Hello, everyone, and welcome to Momentum Finance Channel. My name is Mo, and in this video, I'm honored to be welcoming Darren to our show. Welcome to the show, Darren.
Thanks very much, Mo. I'm glad to be here and talking with you today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. We've got to know each other a little bit through Blossom app, and I've been following your YouTube channel as well. So why don't you introduce yourself for those who may not know you as well?
Yeah, sure. My name's Darren. I live in BC in the Kelowna area. Um, I have, as you said, a YouTube channel, and quite honestly, the reason I have it is because I started watching yours.
Oh, that's very humbling. I appreciate that. Tell us a little bit about your YouTube channel, by the way, the Crazy Canuck Investor.
Yeah, so it's funny. Nobody's ever asked me about the name. I'm actually a skier, and if
Oh,
anybody knows anything about skiing from a long time ago, the Crazy Canuck, they were a bunch of skiers
all
in
right.
Canada, and that's kind of where I came up with the name. But it also goes in line with the fact that when I started investing at the age of 50, kind of jumping in head first, almost. So I kind of put the two together. I needed to come up with a name, and sometimes finding names can be challenging. So I thought they married up very well in this
Hmm.
case.
It's very relevant. And I mean, I didn't know the backstory to it. So thanks for sharing that. What triggered you to actually start investing in the first place?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have a pension at work, and I know there's lots of people out there that like me that do, but my wife doesn't. So when like a few years ago, my father-in-law passed away. So that's my wife's dad, and he managed her investments for us. And obviously, when he passed away, then I had to have a look at these things, and then I realized at that point that maybe we weren't going to be in a good position when we retired for both of us because we have kids as well. And so after reviewing that kind of stuff, I decided, gee, I think I need to learn more. And that's kind of where things started. So my first video was posted in April of 2023. So we're just coming up on that now. So 2 year anniversary. And the thought process was as I educate myself, I'd like to be able to share this because if I made it to this part in my life at 50, man, there must be so many other people out there like me. When you consider the fact that you go to school and you learn a lot of stuff and you don't learn about this kind of stuff
Hmm.
in school. So yeah, that was the whole premise behind it was I wanted to share this experience because I know there's other people out there that might be intimidated by other people that maybe know more or maybe they don't want to go to a bank and learn that kind of stuff. So
And I think a lot of time the audience can relate to that as well. Like, like to your point, like there are folks that maybe have not started investing in their 20s or in their like 30s. Like I know I didn't. So even for me, I had started a lot later, like than typical ones like we see on Blossom. Like, and it's amazing to see, of course, right? You see younger generation being interested about finances and money, and I think it's very promising to see. But still, for us, it's better late than never, right? So, and how can we use the different strategies to kind of buy back some of the possibly like the time that maybe we didn't start there that early. How can we go about it and how can we try to maximize our time in that regards? Um,
absolutely. In fact, that's one of the things that I've done is we're teaching our kids about this now because I didn't learn any of this, and I want them to have an understanding so that when they hit 20, they're not going to do what I did and go buy a motorcycle. When you shouldn't do that. If you take some of that money, it would be worth a lot more later in life. So
Making those smart decisions early on, right? And yeah, and it's so important to teach our young ones early on. What would you, Darren, overall, like if you reflect on essentially you're starting on the investing journey, what would you define as essentially your big why? Like, what is that why that made you kind of like deep down? I know you said you had to manage, start managing, but is there a bigger why behind it?
yeah, I mean, it's that I think that term, I mean, I was born in the 70s, so the financial freedom idea, right?
Hmm.
I know that the new biggest one is to look at fire and how early could you retire, but simplicity is watching your money grow and having a good foundation so that you're not worried about money. Having a relationship with money is really important. And I don't think I've had a good relationship with money up until I started educating myself. And I want my wife and I, and obviously the kids, to have that good foundation and relationship so that when we do retire, that we can enjoy life and not have to worry about where that money is going to come from. And like I said, I think I really thought that our pension would, or my pension would do that for us. And I think you have to set yourself up. The investing part isn't as important as what you're going to do when you pull that money out later
Hmm.
in retirement. It's all about planning, right? And I realized that I missed out on all that stuff. So I've got to catch up now.
100%, 100%. Like to your point, like thinking about like not just these years that we are accumulating essentially, but the years that the drawdown. How are you gonna go about it? And of course, like to your points as well, like your kids, you want to teach them the right as well, the right decisions, the right skills, the right set of mindset early on. Especially this is they have their all the time in the world, so this is a perfect opportunity for them to learn about these things. What have been some of your lessons so far, Darren, in pursuing this journey essentially?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I actually had to sit back and think about this because you did propose some of these questions beforehand to me. And, you know, for me, it's because I'm so new at it, I find that every time I post a video, there's something new in there that I'm learning about. But the big things that I took away are you can't believe everything that you hear or that you read. You've mentioned Blossom Social, and I'm going to give a big shout out to them. Canadian company, so in the political environment, if you're looking to support Canadian, there you go. Blossom Social is a place to be. But what I love about it is when you learn, if you're not making mistakes, you're not learning anything. Now, when it comes to money, the consequences can be a bit more severe than other things. But at the same time, we have to learn and make mistakes, or make mistakes to learn. And in Blossom, there's definitely a lot of different opinions on how you might want to do things, different strategies. Take the time to read them and accept them for what they are, and then learn from all those different ideas that are shared. And that's what I love about Blossom, even when it gets pretty heated in some of those discussions. I think too, the other thing I find interesting is so for me, it was, reading podcasts, YouTube, and obviously I found Blossom through that. Lots of information to use there. But some of the people out there that are in the space are sponsored by lots of different financial institutions. So in the back of your mind, you always want to keep in mind that if they're sponsored by them, chances are they're going to have some tilt towards that company. And so you have to take all the information and make it work for you so that you are using it to your advantage. Don't just believe one person. Use lots of sources and come up with that. So I'd say that's probably the biggest lesson that I've learned.
That's a great lesson. And essentially, also make sure you internalize the information and don't just follow them blindly just because so and so said it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. You did talk about the importance of educating yourself from multiple sources. I think this is a nice segue to the question around what are some of those various possibly resources that you has helped Darren yourself, like to get to where you are, and like resources that you found valuable and you would recommend to others.
Yeah, YouTube was the place that started for sure. And I think that, again, they're so diverse. You have all kinds of different strategies out there. And I have a list, so I'll just go through the various lists. I have posted it several times on Blossom. I do post my videos on there to share that experience, and I sometimes will post this with it so people can see that there's more to it than just the video itself. But a Canadian in a t-shirt definitely was one of the ones that came up. He's very popular on YouTube. And what I love about him is he's your regular Canadian, like he has so much to offer, just like your channel. I think for me, that's important. I don't think I want to go on there and watch somebody that's very commercial, if you will. The Canadian dividend investor out there posting it seems like every 3 days when he's buying stocks. Financial Nirvana Mama, Brandon Beavis for sure, and his dad, great channel. Obviously, he's a big part of Blossom. Robin Haney, I love that guy. Like he's if I was to say to someone what it would look like if I'd done this 30 years ago, that's him right there. Passive income investor, FinTrack Freedom, Bradley Talks Money. If you're looking for some different opinions, Bradley's got to present them to you, and then you have to work through them. Ben Felix, for sure. He has his own YouTube channel, big following, lots of great information. And then obviously I've already mentioned you. The Intelligent Investor. The nice thing about today is you don't necessarily have to read a book anymore. You can just use your phone. I use Spotify or Prime Audio. The books are usually available to you if you have a membership to them. So I did The Intelligent Investor on Spotify. It was easy to listen to. Sometimes they're on YouTube. Some people post them on there. So if you're looking for financial books, The Intelligent Investor is a good one. And then the podcast for the Rational Reminder, obviously,
Hmm.
great podcast. If they ever watch one of your videos here, I actually have finished watching all of their videos, and there are a
Oh,
lot
wow.
of them,
That's
years and
amazing.
years and years of them. There's another one called Global Value that I like to listen to if you're into
Mm,
individual stock positions.
interesting.
And the most recent one that I'm listening to right now is Money for Couples. It's a
Yeah.
podcast because, as I mentioned, having a relationship with money is important. There's so many things that I wish that we could teach our kids. And people like Ben Felix could play a big part in that, I think, because we want to educate them. But this is a great podcast because it talks about your relationship with money and how you might move forward. So those are all the sort of resources that I've used. And of course, that list continues to grow. I keep a list of it and add to it and share it with others.
That's awesome. Like a lot of wealth of knowledge. Thanks for sharing that, Darren. Definitely some of them that I haven't checked out, some I have, and some that, definitely like to your point, like definitely alternative type of perspectives. That's one of the things as well. I think you pointed out around beauty of Blossom as well is like because it's a very open kind of forum, you get a variety of perspectives, and at the end of the day, like you have to also pick and choose like which ones are probably more uh, aligned with, let's say, your investment approach, and maybe some more advocating for different types of investments and maybe not so much close to your kind of preferences. So let's say if you are just starting out and you don't have maybe a wealth of money, maybe something like a private equity may not be something that you're interested in. Though even for me right now, I'm not even interested in at this stage. But long story short, I think you have to pick and choose which one is better suited for your kind of timing and your kind of the state of investment journey that you are in at that time.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that because I started a video series recently on covered calls.
Yeah, tell
I'm
us
still
more.
very skeptical about the whole idea because I think the overarching argument is that your total returns are what matters. Now, as a new investor and still learning, I'm not totally convinced.
Mhm.
So I started a series using a single account. And it's all in Canadian funds. And the idea is to see what those total returns would look like using small amounts of money. And there's a lot of, I think when you mentioned that there's different ways of investing, different strategies, I think it depends on where you are in your life, what's important. There's some people that are in their middle of their life and they're changing their financial environment. Maybe they sell their entire house, they have a wad of money, and they're going to, I don't know, go somewhere and rent. Now they're going to take that money and earn some, returns
Passive
on it to
income, yeah.
pay for their day-to-day or monthly expenses. Where I think for me right now, my strategy is looking more long term. How do
Hmm.
I make the money grow in the meantime? Because generating that monthly income right now is not as important as it would be when I'm in retirement. And that's kind of how my
Right.
view is. But hopefully, this little experiment might bring some more conclusions to that. It's kind of a fun experiment. I only got 3 videos from it right now. Who knows? It also helps me demonstrate that you don't need a lot of money. I think that's the other thing.
Hmm.
You can start investing with a very small amount of money. So that was another key point to take away from that. So
You touched on even starting small. You don't have to have a lot of money. What are some of your tips, Darren, for essentially saving money, building an emergency fund, building some essentially additional funds on the side that maybe you can put towards investing?
I never would have thought that that was an important thing to have. I mean, a
Mm.
lot of us just live paycheck to paycheck. When the money comes in, it kind of zips right back out depending on how you're managing your money. But of course, when I started researching what to do, and the recommendation was to have, uh, some money set aside for emergencies. For instance, if you got laid off, like in my wife's case, if she got laid off, how would we survive if she didn't have that? So, having that 3 to 6 months worth of salary set aside. And for me in the beginning, I thought, oh, it has to be that 6 months. Well, it doesn't. It's 3 to 6 months. So you have to decide how much should
Mhm.
that's the first key step. How much should that be for you? Maybe you look at your expenses for the month or how much you bring in and you decide, you know what, this is how much it'll be. But to get the money put aside, it's the same as investing. The first thing you need to do investing is wipe out your debt. And there's a difference between good and bad debt. You'll hear that talked about a lot. So, some of the examples might be good debt would be a mortgage because there's some growth in your house and things like that. Bad debt would be like, I bought a motorcycle, it cost me 30 grand and now it's wasting away doing nothing. So instead, start setting some money aside, pay off the debts, but build up that emergency fund at the same time. You auto deposit. That's really key. Of the brokerages and banking and financial institutions that I use, they all have the ability to go right from your phone, start depositing that money into that account. And, I come from a generation when a savings account was literally used as a place to park your money. And, if you earned 1%, that was amazing. But a lot of institutions now don't do that anymore. They offer some sort of version of an account where you can earn some money. The key is what to do with the money because it is taxable when it comes back into your account. But auto deposit, very key. Like I said, you want to go over your spending. Chances are you're spending some money on some things that you could alter. And I'm not going to say stop. The new podcast I'm listening to talks about the fact, don't worry about the small things. As an example, when I go to work, I have to pay for parking. I was like, nope, that adds up over time. I'm just going to park wherever and walk or take the bus or whatever the case may be. And then that money can be put towards those debts or towards, saving. Same with my lunch at work. I take my lunch to work. I don't go buy it because that can add up over time as well. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't go out and enjoy a lunch from time to time with your colleagues or whatever the case may be. You just have to spread them out so that you can build up that emergency fund. So it's just critical to set the amount, set it on auto deposit, pick the amount, and look at some of the expenses you have and figure out how can we put some of that money aside.
And being aware of where your money is going is so crucial, and part of it is really like to your point, like at least for the short term, like having an kind of a visibility towards that, maybe jotting it down for a while. Doesn't mean that you have to do it every single day for the rest of your life, but at least in the beginning, until you kind of get a good handle on things. The last part of your comment as well, Darren, I think you were mentioning to 𝗖𝐋𝐈𝖖𝐊 kind of podcast, right? I know in his podcast, in his book, he talks a lot about, identifying what is valuable to you. What does a rich life mean to you? So, for example,
Exactly.
if rich life to you means, for example, you want to spend that quality time once a month or however many times it might be with your family in a fancy restaurant, that's an area that feel free to actually spend on. And because you're being intentional about it, you're planning for it, you're not going to feel guilty about it. I think he used the term
That
guilt-free
is
spending, right?
absolutely right, Mo. The
Yeah.
chapter I listened to yesterday, he's talking about their 10-year anniversary and how they're approximately 8 years or something like that out from it, and how that equates to say 100. And I'm just using some round numbers here, but this gigantic trip they're going to take, it's about $130 a month. So you're right. It takes that guilt factor out of it because it exists. Another good example of dealing with things is as far as the money goes, whether it be your emergency fund or the money that you might want to consider investing because you don't want to put it into something else, is the fact that people tend to spend money without considering other options. So your car insurance would be a good example of that. You may have an option to look at other providers at the end of the year. So maybe you set a reminder in your calendar, say 30 days out, and you start reaching out to other providers, say, hey, this is what they're charging me at this place. What can you offer? You might end up saving $100. Now take that $100, compound it over time. If you're not old like me, that really doesn't matter. But if you're 20, that's going to be big.
Yeah.
Every year you do that, all of a sudden you're going to have way more money when you go to retire. So those are some other things to consider too.
Now, for those, Darren, that maybe are just listening to this interview or maybe just recently joined Blossom and they're kind of overwhelmed. Well, there's so much to learn. Like there's so much to absorb, and folks are talking about tickers and symbols, ETF, index funds. What is your kind of advice to them who are already feeling overwhelmed? How can they get started, essentially?
Yeah, that's a great point. Even for me, after a couple of years of this, there's still a lot to learn, but that's the part I enjoy the most. You have to embrace it. You have to look at this as a lifelong commitment. The part that I missed out on, don't do what I did. Don't wait till you're 50. Start now, even if it's $5. And you know what I love is like Blossom is it's very all encompassing. All of the resources that I mentioned, they're basically contained and they're constantly updating that app. You can start learning about investing in the stock market in their, what are they, 45 seconds to a minute long videos. Take that information, digest it little by little. Don't be worried about jumping into everything all at once. So, there's some key factors that I think you need to think about. We talked about one already. You've got to eliminate the big bad debts. Identify what those are. And once you've done that, then you can start getting that emergency fund set up. Because by now you've looked at your budget. So it's like taking steps. Don't do it all at once. After you've done that, now you got to choose a broker. take your time. Go use the resources that we've mentioned here in the video. There's plenty more. The thing about YouTube that's nice is it makes recommendations based on what you've watched. So you may see some other resource, and that may be worth sharing. And that's what's great about Blossom. You then can deposit it in there, and other people can learn from it. You're not going to be making money overnight. You have to start small, baby steps, right? I guess that's to be the best way to describe it. And yes, there's going to be a lot. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of stocks, ETFs, mutual funds, whatever it is that you're looking to invest in. Simplicity in the start, I think, is the best way. And that's what I love about your approach right now. You've been through that. You've come to the conclusion that we need to stay broadly diversified in many different respects, but one key ETF, right? And that's how you are doing your investing. And there's nothing wrong with starting one way and changing. And I think that's something to keep in mind. Don't worry about, if I was to tell you what I felt like 2 years ago, it wouldn't be how I feel today. I'm sitting in front of you today, talking with you about this, sharing that knowledge that I have. I'm not worried about losing money. And let's face it, right now is the time that people are probably, and you'll see when my video comes out, my next video comes out tomorrow, I'm going to talk about that stuff. You got to be able to stomach some of this stuff. And one of the things I'm going to mention in the video is don't use the small view. Step back, look at the big picture, which is essentially in line with what you're doing in your investing. It's a big picture view of where you're putting your money. So don't get hung up in the small details. Baby steps, one step at a time, and eventually you'll have everything in place that you need to get yourself going. And understand what you're investing in. I think that's the other big key. Understand it. If you don't, it's simple. Like I've heard this many times. A lot of people invest in companies that they use. AKA, if you're a TELUS customer, you might invest in them. They might not be doing very well if you're individually investing in their stock, but you understand that company, as opposed to some other company you know nothing about and throwing your money in it thinking that you're going to grow your money.
One thing that you said there and that resonated with me very well was that it doesn't have to be like a perfect strategy either, right? You want to start small, it's okay, right? You learn as you go, and you adjust your strategy as you learn more. And I want to continue your sentence. You said like, oh, I'm not thinking the same way as like 2 years ago versus now. I would bet you even for me, 2 years from now, I might not be exactly the same way as I was thinking, like because there's so much that comes to our way that we learn from it that and it's normal. There's nothing around it that is bad. Like if let's say Mo or Darren in 2 years from now they change their strategy, or maybe they were thinking this way is the right way, and now they're maybe focused more towards cash flow or whatever that future decision might be. I think it's fine. At the end of the day, personal finance is personal, and it's what makes the most sense for us and our families. But what we are saying essentially is make sure you do your due diligence and you're being
Yeah.
intentional about that decision that you're making.
For me, it's both sharing the experiences that I'm learning, and the YouTube side of it is equally challenging as well, to put that all together and share with people. I've actually been surprised about the positivity. I don't get a ton of comments, but there hasn't been any super negative stuff, which when you're opening your personal finance up, you'd think that might be the case. But as you say, there's so many different ways to do things. When people, they're either going to resonate with me when they watch, they go, oh, I want to watch this guy because he has stuff to share. And I think for me, I've always been a person to be very broad about what I do. I don't focus specifically on one specific thing. And there's definitely a lot of different ways to look at investing, like you said. Now, the one thing that's interesting to note too is when I said you need to pick a broker, the cost of fees adds up. And if you're not careful with which broker you're using or which, brokerage basically or financial institution, that can chew away at a lot of stuff. And now we have a bit of a competition in the market. If you're listening to this first time, the broker that I recommend if you're starting out, and I don't take this lightly, and it's not that I'm sponsored by them. I do have a referral link as you do. So if you guys choose to use it, you can look in our video descriptions and use it if you want. But that's Wealthsimple. And the nice thing about Wealthsimple is it's on your phone. You can utilize it very simply. In fact, I was at a Wave for work recently. Somebody who didn't know anything was in their mid-30s, and before the end of dinner, we had their Wealthsimple account set up.
Amazing.
We had money deposited into their account, and they were already working towards it. That's how easy this is. as opposed to, you know, when back in the days when you had to go into a bank or a brokerage or whatever the case may be. It's all simple at your hands, and I love Wealthsimple. That doesn't mean that that won't change, but that's the one I think for beginners that's really good to use.
It's amazing Canadian business for sure. It's fantastic. They've been doing a great job. I think the one part, and to be honest with you, I love Wealthsimple, even though I recently switched over to Questrade because of like the promotion that they had. But deep down, still love absolutely Wealthsimple. Have so much respect for what they have done, and amazing company. I think one part that kind of made it a little bit like made me pause, not necessarily about Wealthsimple per se. Of course, this is related to them, but even more generally, the fact that they are starting some of these newer product that, like for example, margin account and like mm, it, you know, at one point, like I was talking about, like they are trying to always make it simpler, make it easier, and particularly a lot of their kind of clients are newer investors, like maybe many folks that are younger. I get that there is a demand for it. I'm hoping that as well, they're introducing them with some sort of a responsible approach to it. Like, for example, educating folks around it. I haven't dabbled into it, so I'm not going to say they are or not. But it's just one of those areas that I think is important for new investors. Just because it's offered, don't go, for example, oh, margin account is offered now. Sign up and let's give it a try. Be careful with some of those products. They have some risk associated with them.
Yeah, that's actually a
Yeah.
great point. I think that Wealthsimple is very responsive to the customer. That's been my experience. So if you have suggestions, the last call I made to them, we must have spent 5 or 10 minutes just talking about, you know, recommendations. So that's a good point. If you have some suggestions for them like that, they seem to respond fairly well to them. I mean, if you think about it in the banking space, but we have
Mhm.
the top five big banks, and
Very
they're like
different, right?
one
Yeah.
of the low hanging fruit right
Yeah.
now. But
Yeah.
they're certainly giving those other banks a run for their money. You know,
100%.
and I'm not afraid to share it. I was with TD. I was with TD because that's what Canadians do. You pick a big bank, but at the
Yeah.
end of the day, you need to do something smarter for you and your money. And Wealthsimple definitely offered that for me. So that's a good point. But don't be shy to share that with them. I think they would respond to that. And I do see emails from them from time to time that go over what the
Mm.
market's doing and things like that. So I think from and just to be clear, when I started with Wealthsimple, it was with the tax part.
Yeah.
Way before they were even doing what they're doing, they had that existed, and I started doing my own taxes. That's how I kind of came in contact with them, and then eventually through this investing thing, I found
It's
them.
amazing
So
that they offer all of those products over time. I think they at some point like they started like in the beginning. I think they acquired, but now they rebranded under Wealthsimple Tax. And yeah, I must say I'm using it as well.
yeah,
Darren as a for sure. Like yeah, great product. I want to also quickly go back to your channel. I think one thing that Darren really resonates for the folks as well is that you're very genuine as well in your contents. And you know sometimes I think quality over quantity. You may not make maybe a video every single day and it's okay, and I think sometimes actually the audience respects that, like you know I rather wait like a certain time, and when then the video pops up I know that this is what I can expect from it. It's not just for the sake of oh putting a video out there because I want to like oh this is a hot topic, let's just run on it and just monetize it and whatnot. So I appreciate that, I respect that, and I think you definitely are going to build a lot more following over time because a lot of folks resonate with your content. So that's great, keep
yeah,
up the great
I
work.
would, and I think that's true because the people that I listed, including yourself, that's why I connected with them as well. Finance is something that, you know, I don't want to listen to, like I said, a commercialized view of it. I want to hear it from grassroots people. In fact, I was just funny. I was going over my first script that I wrote, which was kind of funny when you reflect back on your first videos. You hear a lot of YouTubers talk about it. I kind of chuckled to myself about what I wrote and how I said it. I would definitely say it differently, but I wrote a script and I read it, and I do that still today because some of the content I don't want to mislead people. I want to make sure I'm providing the right content. But when I read that one, I kind of chuckled to myself because it didn't, even when I read, it didn't seem as genuine as I would say it today. Like if you were asking me questions like we
Hmm.
are right now.
Yeah.
But I think that also demonstrates the growth and that foundation that's so important. It's a scary thing.
Yeah.
Most people just pull their wallet out. They pay for whatever it is through their credit card or whatever. This is a lot of money we're talking about when it comes to investing. So, but it's equally important. And that, again, I go back to simplicity. Start early. Don't wait. Start early. And if you have any questions I think you do too. We all have email accounts associated to our YouTube sites. You can actually email us directly. And if we don't know the answer, we most certainly can point you in the right direction. Maybe it's to another YouTuber or maybe some other institution or something. And like I said, Ben Felix and their crew there at the Rational Reminder, you're definitely going to find a lot of really great information from them.
100%, 100%. I will definitely encourage folks to, if they haven't done so, to check out and follow the Crazy Canuck Investor. Definitely, you're not gonna regret that. And also follow him and us if you're interested on Blossom. I think you're not gonna regret it. If you're Canadian or even if you're American, I think they're offered both in Canada and US. You're gonna connect with so many amazing, like-minded folks. And sometimes, we do need a little of that daily dose of kind of nudge and support. Like, yeah, you're on the right track, and positivity goes a long way. I think it can be a hard journey. So why not go through this journey with folks that are like-minded? They are there to support you, build on your positivity, and hopefully you can learn from one another through sharing your lessons and some of your mistakes that maybe you've made along the way. Darren, any final thoughts or words of wisdom for our viewers before we kind of end this episode?
No, I just want to say I really appreciate you inviting me on to talk with you. It's funny, through the the space, we'll call it, it's international, right? Like it's not just Canada, but at the same time, I'm now connected one-on-one with you because prior to today, we had chatted through some, messaging and things like that, but I never actually spoken to you directly. But
Yeah,
I feel like we've spoken a lot,
yeah,
and I think largely due to YouTube and to Blossom. I keep coming back to that. I can't say enough. It was such a unique concept. You just have to have an open mind about it. But I think you're going to find all the questions that you asked me. If you read through a lot of those comments, you're going to find the information that you're talking about. And if you're not sure, reach out to us and hopefully we can point you in the right direction or at least get you started if you're brand new.
100%. Thank you so much, Darren, for your time. I really appreciate it. It's been such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for spending time I know on a Saturday morning and taking time from your family to be with us here. Appreciate that.
You too as well.
Have a good rest of your day.
Okay, take care.